really just one final question. We asked it to every one of our guests, and it's probably the most important question of the podcast. Skyline or Gold Star?
I can't answer that question.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I can't answer that question.
Never mind. I'm sorry, man. They let me know when you're recording type of thing. I'm just kidding. I can see it up there. And we've gotten feedback from a listener.
Right now we're recording.
Yeah. So we got feedback from a listener. They let me know when you're recording type of thing. I'm just kidding. I can see it up there. But one of our one of our followers.
This is what, episode 6. Mike.
When I got coffee in my hand.
Yeah, episode 6. The Mike Brown.
8 days.
No, episode 6 total.
That's 6 right here.
Right. Okay. Episode 6, the Mike Brown Band. John and Sam. Big. I think this is probably the biggest show to date yet.
I don't want to take
this one's got to be
other guests.
At least top 5.
And we've had 6.
Right.
So that means who's the odd
man?
Well,
we did that out? One. We did that one show that was.
We'll put ourselves out. Yeah. We'll put ourselves out. Yeah.
See.
Yep. It just feels like it's been longer than a week, but wow! Now the more like, oh my God, 5 minutes before he walks into the on stage in the lobby, this is an exciting week to talk.
Football. I mean, just like real quick, we're gonna end. Welcome on Dan HOARD, voice of the Bengals. Here is probably it's been pretty influential in mine and your life, for the last 10 years at least, because it's who we've been listening to. And his counterpart Dave Lapham, we've talked about him before in the show, and we've shared our anecdotes about him and just how amazing he is, and I look forward to picking the brain of Dan and looking forward to seeing how it is, or what it's like working with somebody like that, Lap on
I didn't think about that. That's a great question.
Yeah, I think on his perspective on the Bengals and what's going on here recently with the team, but more so is like, man, how do you do it? I mean, you have to match that energy or have to harness it. Like, do you always have to be the guy? Because you have to be ready. Lap could drop a lap bomb at any time, and he could.
A lap bomb.
Yeah, I don't know if that's anybody calls it.
Cool.
I'm gonna try it. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, that's what I'm really looking forward to. And it looks like he's in the lobby right now. He's early. Are you ready to get this show rolling?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I am. And now, a man who, per Podbean Sunday, is probably the only other human being other than myself who ate a whole bag of Reese's Pieces and leftover candy. That's probably the least way you'd ever know this man. He is a legend around Cincinnati, Ohio, and the voice of the Cincinnati Bengals. And having him on is the greatest thing since. He'll tell you that. Dan HOARD, let's go, baby! How you doing?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm good.
Yeah.
How you guys
doing? Small crowd here, Dan. There's a small crowd. Very few people in here.
Damn. I was expecting a large audience.
No, not here. Not here. Wrong place.
We're growing, every week. Yeah. And with somebody like yourself on the show, like we couldn't. It's tough for Sam and I as lifelong friends. I'm John. Sam, obviously, is my cousin. I don't know if you're familiar with us too much, but obviously, we're very passionate about the Bengals, and we turned this weekly phone call in the fall into a podcast. So having someone like yourself, who we've been listening to for almost a decade on, is absolutely incredible, and we couldn't be more appreciative. Thank you so much.
But the Mike Brown Band is not a band.
You don't want to hear us play instruments, Dan. Yeah.
Right now it's not, but Dan, it's a foretelling of the future of all the people that will maybe one day join to listen to the Bengals music that we will be putting out into the future. And hopefully what it seems like now, this most recent week is leading towards that, because that was a heck of a win, which we will get to here in a little bit.
Well, since you clearly listen to the Bengals Booth podcast.
I do. I listen to the Podbean, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know that I like to sing. So when
I do, yeah. And the whole thing is like, if I don't know the song, I try to figure out, how is he going to sing this song? But like, that's the way. And sometimes there's more than one song of the same title. So I'm like, I'm just going to go with this one. I'm going to say, and then of course it's that addition. I love the pause. That's my favorite.
The pause is the key.
Never just, it's addition. I love it. I look forward to Podbean every week. It is great.
But we really can't karaoke these days in the coronavirus era. So this is the closest I get to come.
Yep.
So yeah, for just for our listeners that may not know who you are, Dan, you're the second Syracuse University alumni we've had on. We had Joe Denneman on a couple weeks ago.
I'm aware.
Yeah,
Joe's the best.
Absolutely.
Joe.
Yeah, and I went to school in Cincinnati. I'm a UC alum, and it was really cool getting a chance to talk to him about when the Big East was great. And that stretch from 05 to 2013, 14, before it all broke up. Those UC teams were fun. Being coached by Mick Cronin, they were a fun team to watch while I was in school. I saw the Sweet 16 team. I was at the Xavier UC fight in 2012 with Kenny Freese and Yancey Gates. It was a wild time. Obviously, that wasn't Big East play, but it was a pretty incredible time. I know you're the voice of also the Bearcats, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Great gigs. Love it. And thank God it worked out this way, because I am not qualified to do anything else.
Well, we think you're pretty great.
Thanks.
Yeah,
had I not landed a job in sports broadcasting, I truly have no clue what I would have done. So thankfully, I've been able to carve out a living in this profession.
Well,
that voice was meant for broadcasting, Dan.
And especially it's synonymous with Cincinnati sports, from college to pro. And like Sam touched on originally, you're the voice of the Bengals right now, partnering with Lap every week. This past week, man, had to be a really, really fun game to call. Probably in the last two seasons, had to be probably the funnest one to call, in my estimation. But what do you think overall of the performance of the team, and was there anything that really stuck out to you that we made improvements from the week prior?
How about the offensive line? Good God. They had 4 backups starting on the offensive line, 5 if you go back to opening day. So we knew 3 guys were going to be out, and that was scary enough. And then we're getting ready to go on the air on Sunday morning. It was about 15 minutes before our pregame show began, and I get a message on my phone, Michael Jordan is sick. And I turned to Lap, and I'm like, hey, Lap. Michael Jordan's out too. And you know how emotional Lap gets.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
He wasn't too excited by that news. So the fact that they put 30-plus on the board with 4 backups starting on the offensive line, I've never seen anything like it. And, if you listen to the podcast, that was the first question I asked Lap after the game. I said, put this into perspective. You played offensive line for 12 years in the pros, 10 in the NFL, 2 in the USFL. How unusual is it to take 4 subs on the offensive line and thrive? And he's like, never happened before.
Yeah, he said it's unimaginable. He said unimaginable.
In college football.
Like, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was great.
And this is something that I kind of want to quickly transition to, just to kind of get into it. So everyone in Cincinnati prior to the season was saying, we need offensive line help. We need this. We need that. We got to wait till the draft to get this tackle. Well, then you look at this offensive line that played most recently against, like Lap and yourself said, a pretty decent, above decent defensive line in Tennessee. And does it really go – and Pittsburgh has an amazing defense, and that's something that anybody who watches football just knows that their defense is so – and what they did last year to us. But to get to the whole point of it, what changes do you see happening on the offensive line by Pittsburgh that might shock fans going into that week?
I don't know. I think Quinton Spain eventually starts on the offensive line. I don't know if it'll be the Steelers game, but based on his performance with 1 day of practice, I mean, he was great. And he's the type of guard that Jim Turner likes. He's massive. He's 330 pounds. You can't push him back at the quarterback.
Mhm.
So again, I don't know if it's going to be the next game, but I do think at some point he'll be starting at one of the guard spots. Other than that, I think Trey Hopkins is back in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
I think, well, Jonah Williams will obviously be back in the starting lineup at left tackle. The right tackle question's interesting because I thought going into the season that there was going to be a legitimate battle between Fred Johnson and Bobby Hart, and it didn't really turn out that way. And for a couple of years now, we've heard the coaches say Bobby Hart's not as bad as everybody thinks. He's better than the Pro Football Focus ranking, etc. If you look at the Pro Football Focus ranking right now, Bobby Hart is the 36th tackle in the NFL. Now, that's not great, but it's better than a lot of big name guys. It's better than Matthews from the Falcons. It's better than Lawan before he got hurt with Tennessee. It's better than Costanzo from the Colts. So again, I'm not saying his Hall of Fame bust is ready, but I do think that he's probably playing like the guy that we've been hearing about, that at least is okay. Now would I like to see?
One of the Lab's been so good about foretelling. It's I don't know if Zach Taylor was actually listening to him, but going into I think it was Jacksonville week, he's like, I'd start Alex Redmond. I would start Alex Redmond in a heartbeat. And that guy came out like that week and then ended up starting. And another guy that Lap loves is Akeem Adeniji, a 6th-round pick. Said he's so raw, but he's like, and of course, it's like, damn, I love this guy. Like, he loves Adeniji. And it's just interesting because that's Lap's like bread and butter. Like, that's where his heart's at. He played every single position in the offensive line. Do you, from him, if you feel comfortable stating, is that someone that Lap feels comfortable putting at right tackle already? Or is he like Fred Johnson if you're going to replace a guy like Bobby Hart?
I think Fred would be next on the totem pole for now, but I think long-term, Lap loves Adeniji as a future starter on the offensive line. He thinks that athletically, Adeniji's the best guy they've got. He's just not ready yet. And it often takes NFL offensive linemen a couple of years before they're really good. I mean, as solid as Jonah has been this year, he's easily the number 1 ranked first-year starter in the NFL, but he's still like 27th overall at tackle. So that's the same thing with Adeniji, but Lap loves him long-term.
Last question before I know, John, you wanted to ask him, but this is my last question. Would you, going into the draft, would you risk not taking a tackle and taking someone on the defensive side based off of what you see in the offensive tackle? Or do you think that right now it's offensive tackle or bust regardless next year draft? Or is it you have to watch it play out for the rest of the year?
I've swung over into thinking that a pass rusher is the bigger priority, honestly, and that's not based on who they have on the offensive line. That's who they have on the defensive line. First, we don't know if Carl Lawson will re-sign. He'll be a free agent at the end of the year. You've lost Dunlap. You've got to have somebody on the edge that can get after the quarterback. So for me, right now, that can change over the last 8 games. Pass rusher has become the number 1 priority.
And I'm glad that we kind of are transitioning into that because I was a little shocked, a little surprised, I guess, that we, maybe not surprised, but I was interested to see where the John Ross thing ended up with the trade deadline this week, especially after moving off of Dunlap and moving him on to Seattle. I was going to ask the same question, like a couple of names, especially if we move back and we put some wins together with our schedule coming up. That's going to push us back a little bit in the draft, and maybe outside the top 10 is more of a realistic range where we're going to end up, where some of those high-end offensive linemen may not be there, for addressing a need. But now that being said, were you a little surprised that we didn't move off of John Ross on Tuesday and we're going to let it play out?
Yeah, a little surprised, but it just tells me that there wasn't much of a market. I don't know what the Bengals were asking for, but I can't imagine it was anything too great. I mean, they understand the reality. He has not produced. So it wasn't like they were going to, recoup their first-round draft pick that they used on him. But the fact that they didn't make a deal tells me that there was no team out there that was really making a decent offer. Yeah. Otherwise, I think they would have made a deal.
And I guess my point behind that is as well as it looks like the draft picks of this year are kind of panning out. They're definitely room for improvement, but we are seeing, the 5th and 6th round guys getting some serious playing time. Adeniji the most recently. I was wondering even a 6th or 7th round pick for John Ross wouldn't be a bad haul to come back. So I was a little surprised on Tuesday, but it's one less thing that I guess we have to worry about. We just know that we know the status of it moving forward.
And Dan, I think you'll agree with this. If you were to get a 6th or 7th round pick, one guy who I believe was a 6th or 7th, I think he was 7th, had an unbelievable game, which was Auden Tate. And my brother would disown me as his brother if I didn't mention him right now. But I just think that on top of just elaborating on Auden Tate's performance, just how well the Bengals actually do draft. And to get a 6th or 7th round for another team, like, oh, that's a waste of a pick. But you look at even like TJ Houshmandzadeh, I think he was a 6th or 7th round pick.
Seventh.
Yeah, 7th. And then Adeniji was a 6th round pick. And then you got, I think Auden Tate was a 7th. So that's why I was kind of like even disgruntled that we didn't get a 7th round pick for John Ross, because we draft really well. And to get that kind of production out of late round picks is something that Cincinnati's been able to do, even undrafted, like with Vontaze Burfict. Is that something that you see Zach Taylor being able to carry on to the future? Or is it just kind of like, is that just something that happens every once in a blue moon, but it seems to be happening a lot in Cincinnati nowadays?
Well, I can tell you that this organization values 6th and 7th round picks for that reason. And that is one of the reasons why I thought Ross would get dealt, because they do see value in late picks. You never know when the next Auden Tate or TJ Houshmandzadeh is going to show up in the 7th round. So it's not like they say, nah, 7th round, we don't care. What are you going to get in the 7th round? They do care, because sometimes that guy turns out to be a key contributor. I think from 2009 to 2014, I think those are the years, maybe 2008, 2014, the Bengals drafted better than any team in the NFL. That was the key to the 5-year playoff run. They hit it out of the park year after year. And then beginning with the Ogbuehi Fisher draft, they had 3 bad ones. It happens. If you look at every team's draft track record, they don't always score. And unfortunately, that's the reason why they've missed the playoffs for a few years in a row, at least the biggest reason. They did not succeed in the draft. But I agree with this most recent class. I mean, if it was only Burrow, it was going to be a good class.
Right.
When you add Higgins, the linebackers, hopefully Adeniji, Khalid Kareem, who I think's got potential. You know, who knows what Marcus Bailey will ultimately be. But I think it looks like it's going to be a really good draft.
Absolutely. And I think, before we even start talking about the draft, I guess we still have, we have 8 more games to play, and we're going into the bye week, I think, at the right time to allow our hitters to get healthy and to get back on the field. And we start, it doesn't get any easier right out of the gate. We go with Pittsburgh, who will probably, who will be undefeated going into it, or at least, one of the top contenders in the AFC.
You don't see the Cowboys beating them this week?
I doubt it.
Who's playing quarterback this week? Is Paul Crewe playing quarterback this week?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? All credit to Ben DiNucci. I think, to be thrown into that situation, I want to, at least they were in the game at some point, but no, I don't see him doing very well against the Steelers defense.
If I'm the Red Rifle, I take one more week off.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially after that Monday night game last year,
just like, the neck's a little sore. Maybe one more week will do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, we get the Steelers, and then the season starts to lighten up a little bit.
Yeah.
So and especially after the way that we played this week, and I think we proved a lot of people wrong about what the Bengals can't close and they can't win the tough games. Realistically, looking at our schedule, you have, the Washington football team, the Giants, the Cowboys, Houston's a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And then realistically,
Dolphins are good.
They are.
Dolphins turned out to be pretty good. But if Tua is still playing at that point, he wasn't very good last week. So that's going to be interesting for the Dolphins, because they're in the hunt. They're legit. Yeah. I mean, their defense is really, really good. So do they stick with Tua if he doesn't play very well? Do they go back to Fitzy? I don't know. I think Fitzy makes them a better team right now, but by the time the Bengals play the Dolphins, maybe Tua's, it's got it going.
So realistically, what do you think our outlook is? Do you think we can win? We can make some noise in the playoff hunt, or was this weekend just a great weekend moving forward into the momentum going into the offseason?
Well, they've gone into the fourth quarter with a lead 6 times in 8 games, so they can certainly do that again, or come close to doing that again. I mean, 2 games against Pittsburgh, 1 game against Baltimore. Those 3 are tough. The other 5, I mean, you outlined the NFC least. They're terrible.
Yeah.
You know, Houston, Houston's not good. I think Miami is. So I did a thing for Bengals.com this week. We do it every week called Who Day Conversations. And Jeff Hobson, their website guy, said, "How about he said, how about 6-2 in the second half to go 8-7-1? You know, that's probably going to be tough, but I think that's what you shoot for."
Yeah, and
So
I think
prior to this, everyone was saying we're going to beat Cleveland, we're going to lose to Tennessee. And you can even go back, not that many people will, and watch our past pod. And I said we're going to lose to Cleveland, we're going to beat Tennessee because, I mean, if you look in the last, I don't know, 5, even 8 years, we've had really good success from even your first year called in 2011 when we had no business beating Tennessee in Tennessee. And then 2014, we beat them. 2018, they were a tackle away from beating them. But we've always had success, so I felt really good about that. And the one thing I said was, if you beat Tennessee, you had to have a different conversation about the Pittsburgh game. So I think the one difference between us playing Pittsburgh now and since we last beat them in 2015, which was 5 years ago to Sunday, was the last time that we beat Pittsburgh. Because I'll never forget this. I never forget that because we were down, I think, by like 6 or whatever. But the point is, we have number 9 around center. And I believe that he can keep you in games. Do you actually believe there is a realistic chance that the Bengals, aside from any given Sunday, the whole terminology of any given Sunday, do you think the Bengals have a legitimate shot against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh because not only of number 9, but having, in my opinion, the best wide receiver group in the NFL is enough to take down Pittsburgh and win that game?
I hope so, but I think Pittsburgh is the second best team in the AFC behind Kansas City. I thought Baltimore was better. Now I think it's Pittsburgh. I mean, the defense is crazy good, as you all know. And to me, it's going to be a litmus test game for Joe. The only time this year that he's looked like a rookie was Baltimore. I want to see if he looks like a rookie again against that defense, or if this is the next big step for him. So I don't know if that equals a win, but I don't see them just getting flattened like they did against the Ravens. And if they don't, that's okay. Hopefully that's a big step forward.
Do you think that the defense is something – because I think everybody just harps on the defense. I mean, we're up 31, whatever. I think it's 31-14. We kind of let them with a touchdown. But I think at that point we're just playing deep and not letting anything go over the top, which is fine. After this year, do you see them making any changes on the defensive side? Or do you think that this defense is just a player away from being able to get that scheme that Lou Anarumo is running? Because my whole thing is, if I look at Pittsburgh, I think our offense can beat Pittsburgh. I really do. I really think that our offense, with the amount of weapons we have, hopefully getting Joe Mixon back, Gio is just the best pass blocker, in my opinion, in the National Football League. And Joe Burrow attested to that too. I think our offense is good enough to win football games against the top-tier talent of the league, but I just don't – as a fan, we're watching the defense and we think opposite. But what do you see – and being around this team and other great defenses that the Cincinnati has produced, what do you see from the defensive side? Do you think that it is stable and something you can carry on to the future, or do you think it needs to make changes?
Oh, I think they're going to make changes. I mean, let's start with pass rush. It's been almost non-existent. You got to get back to the point where you can rush 4 and have a chance of getting around the quarterback, which has not been the case so far this year. So between the draft and free agency, I think that's what you have to attack. I think they'll also obviously continue to look to improve the offensive line. But to me, pass rush has become the number one priority. You got to try to re-sign Will Jackson, so you've got your cover corner. It'll be nice to have Trey Waynes back. I think that'd be a great 1-2 punch at corner. But you got to get after the quarterback a lot better than they have so far.
And do you think does that also mean coaching staff-wise as well?
I keep saying about the coaching staff, let's see how it plays out. They're not going to make major changes in the middle of the year. They have rarely done that in franchise history. And I just don't see them doing that in the second year of a staff with, a rookie quarterback that they're trying to develop. So let's see where the cards fall at the end of the year. If they win 5 or 6 games in the second half and everybody shows improvement, people won't be calling for coaching changes. If they struggle against teams from the NFC least, then they will be calling for coaching changes, and the organization would probably be more inclined to do it.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one with this theory, but you mentioned the rookie quarterback. We have a young nucleus, it seems like, on offense, building with Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins. I mean, and even Drew Sample starting to step up. It looks like offensively, if we can get the offensive line corrected, we're going to be fine. But this Joe Burrow and having that young nucleus and that kind of the direction has been, or the ship has been corrected, for example. Do you think that will attract free agents to Cincinnati for the first time? Like, we're going to be ones that are going to have the opportunity to take on somebody big, or is that even in our DNA? Should we even expect it at all?
Joe, that happened last year. Were you paying attention this past off season?
Well, no. Can we replicate it? That's, I guess, what does Joe Burrow help that? A lot of money. Okay, got it.
It's always money. People, will say, what free agent is going to want to come to the Bengals or any other team in any other sport? It always comes down to the bag. Are you willing to pay the guy? And they did. They went out and gave, they made DJ Reader the highest paid nose tackle in the NFL. They paid Trey Waynes a ton of money to come over as a corner. If you pay, they will come. And the Bengals showed their willingness to pay last year. And when you've got a rookie quarterback or a quarterback in his first contract, so that he is going to be making, $36 million over 4 years instead of $36 million in 1 year.
Every year.
Yes, you've got the opportunity under the cap to invest in the other positions, and I'm confident they will.
That's what I was kind of looking for, was that if you have confidence that we're going to continue to do what we did over the course of this year. Like DJ Reader, even though he's not on the field, is having a big impact. It still feels like.
I love DJ Reader. Oh, yeah. And I called you Joe.
Yeah, you love that bowl of cereal. I love your tweet. I love your tweet to him after you guys won the bowl of cereal. Like, you have that bowl of cereal after the game. That's awesome.
I was trying to get DJ a deal with a cereal company, like an endorsement, because I interviewed him in the off season and he lost a ton of weight after he signed here. And I said, what food that you love did you give up? And he didn't hesitate. He's like, sugary cereal. I love Captain Crunch. And he reels off a big list of sugary cereals. So do you remember Eric Weddle? Safety, long-time NFL safety. Yeah. So Eric Weddle loves ice cream. So when he was playing for the Baltimore Ravens, he had Victory ice cream. So when the Ravens won a game, he would have this big bowl of ice cream with all sorts of toppings, candy bars and spreads and stuff. And then he would tweet out a picture. This is this week's Victory ice cream. So I said to DJ, you've got to do celebration cereal, or you're crushing some Captain Crunch or something like that every time the Bengals win. And we'll see if we can, get you an endorsement from Kellogg's or something. And he loved it. And then he got hurt. So it's celebration cereal on hold.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, speaking of celebration, all those toppings, this is like a weird transition. Bengals fans have not had someone to celebrate playing quarterback on Sundays. Honestly, I'm a big fan of Andy Dalton. Loved what he did. And not only what he did on the field, but off the field was tremendous. And then before that, you had Carson Palmer in the air assault that was 2005. I want to hear your opinion on Joe Burrow, because even before all this, you were very vocal in saying on the Bengals side of saying, this is not a bad place to go. Like, the media was really harping that, please don't bring Joe Burrow. Please don't come here. Please don't. You don't want to come here to Cincinnati. And I'm with you on the line. Like, every quarterback that's come here has had success. Joe Burrow coming in here has not only had instant success on the field, but do you foresee him bringing the jungle back to Cincinnati, not only with the excitement of just like a couple of wins here and there, but just making Cincinnati a fun place to go and watch football again, that you remember in 2011 when the jungle was packed and after those years? Do you think what kind of player do you think Joe Burrow is going to be for the Bengals organization on the field, but more importantly off the field? Like, what do you see from him when you talk to him?
I think that would have happened this year. I really do. I think the place would have been rocking if we could have had more than 12,000 people in there, because there's such excitement generated over Burrow. I remember after it became obvious that the Bengals were going to select him number one, but before it happened, he was in town to visit his girlfriend, and like people are, going crazy and sending out tweets. Oh my God, I saw him at B-Dubs, and stuff like that. The excitement level over this guy is the most I've seen since I've lived in this town, since Ken Griffey Jr. came here from Seattle. Now, unfortunately, that didn't work out the way we all hoped it would because of his injuries. But hopefully this story will, because, Joe Burrow, it was well worth the pain we went through last year.
Well, and you had to think, like, all of that contributed. Like, when we lost Whitworth, that contributed to getting Burrow. When we lost Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones Jr., we got gutted after that contributed. Everything contributed to us getting not only a kid from Ohio who's literally 2.5 hours from. It's literally one of the most fascinating stories. And I have to keep reminding myself, I don't know if you've ever seen Airplane, but to quote that, I had to pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming. I had to ask the person next to me to pinch me to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Every day I watch Joe Burrow on Sundays, I have to remind myself that he is a part of the Bengals organization. That makes it fun as a fan to cheer for a guy like that. When you talk to him, what gives you the most excitement when you interview him on Big Wednesday?
Unfortunately, in those Zoom sessions, it's not the same as being in the locker room and sitting down next to a guy and interviewing him. I mean, by now, I would have had many one-on-one interviews with Joe. I've only had one that we did over the phone shortly after the draft. So it's not quite the same, but I think he's done everything right. Everything he says is right on the money. His leadership is great. His play speaks for itself. The thing that I admire most is his toughness. Dude's taking shots now. 28 sacks. I think it's 66 hits. Thank heavens last week it was no sacks and 2 hits. We're trending in the right direction.
Right.
But, I mean, he takes these shots. He gets up with a smile on his face and then fires a seed on the next play. So his toughness is tremendous. And I really think that when you have a quarterback that displays that, that really has an impact on the rest.
And Lapp was trying to get me. He's like, "Hey, how you feeling this week?" He's like, "Good." I'm like, 2 weeks in a row. I love that. I'm like, he's like, "Are you sore?" "Nope." "Good." I'm like, dude, that is so raw. That is so cool, man.
And Dan, you'd probably have a better, you'd probably have a better idea than Sam or I. Sam's out in California. I'm here in Florida. So, but, generally you talk about how PBS would be rocking if, we're allowed to have fans in it. So I'm assuming that the city is very excited, like you mentioned about that. But is Joe Burrow, in your opinion, you've been covering the league a lot longer than us. We're fans, so of course our opinion is a little bit biased. But is Joe Burrow one of those players that is going to keep Cincinnati relevant for the next decade? Not just 5 years like what Andy Dalton and AJ did, and then it kind of, went off the map. Is Joe Burrow going to be the one that every year, the AFC seems to add another quarterback that's going to be a little bit just as good. You have Herbert and Burrow this year, not just Burrow. And then you have Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. And, it just seems like the Deshaun Watsons, it just seems like the AFC is loaded. Can Burrow crack that in year 2 and year 3? In your opinion? I think so, but I'm a fan,
Yes, I'm a fan too. But here's why I say yes, because people whose opinions I respect universally say yes. Did you happen to watch the JT O'Sullivan Super Burrow video on YouTube yesterday?
Yes, after you recommended that, and I'm watching a lot of Dan Orlovsky, who just drools over every Monday. Every Monday.
Yes. So when guys like that are as effusive as they are, then I buy it because, like I said, I'm a fan. I mean, I'm a broadcaster. I try to be honest and, learn as much about the sport as I possibly can, but I got into it because I love it and I'm a fan. But when I hear those guys that played the sport at the highest level just go crazy over what he's doing at this stage of his career, and that's the thing they keep coming back to. They're like, this isn't normal. You've got to understand what he's doing on this team at this stage of their development is not normal. I mean, he's on a pace to throw for more than 4,500 yards, and I know he's throwing it a bunch. That's a factor. He's thrown it more than any other quarterback in the NFL, but that would shatter the NFL record for a rookie. It would break the team record for passing yards in a season. They've had some good quarterbacks over the years. So I'm just so excited by what the quarterback gurus are saying when they watch this guy play.
Well, the thing that was so fascinating is we talked about Pittsburgh earlier. Usually on 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 7, Ben Roethlisberger's out there. You're like, gosh, man, he's probably going to pick this up. That's what he does best. As a fan now, at 3rd and 9, 3rd and 7, I'm like, we're going to pick this up. And I've never been able to have that confidence. I mean, that throw on 3rd and 9 to Tyler Boyd, and then when they actually put that in slow motion, I don't know if you watched Brian Baldinger's breakdown of that too.
Yeah,
it was so fascinating because Joe Burrow in his press conference afterwards on Sunday said, I really had a good deal for, Tyler Boyd and the timing. But if you watch that play, if Tyler Boyd is a second late, that ball goes up, that's going to get picked and probably go for 6. If it's a second earlier, I mean, and for him to be so nonchalantly like, oh, I just have a really good energy with TB, like I said, if I wasn't a fan of the Bengals, I'd be watching being like, wow, this kid is fun. And even people who made fun of me as being a Bengals fan come up to me now and like, your team's, but Joe Burrow, man, I'm like, I know. And it makes me so excited because, like you said, he always finds room for improvement. It's just so exciting as a fan to like know that he's on the Bengals. You get to call him every Sunday, and that's and with the calls that you guys did on Sunday, especially on that Burrow play, man, it is so exciting and just amplifies it to the next level.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the funny thing about Burrow is because I do the UC games, he went through that period where he decided he was going to transfer from Ohio State, and it came down to UC or LSU. And I'm telling you, that off season, I'm texting Luke Fickell every few days saying, how's it look on Burrow? I mean, I thought I was going to get the chance to do 2 years of Joe Burrow at the college level.
Did you hear what he said to Mo Ager, though, why he didn't go in? Did you hear what he said?
He wanted to win a championship or something like that, right? Yeah. Hey, you know, I love UC. Things are obviously going better for the Bearcats than the Tigers right now, but Joe Burrow made the right choice. It worked out very well for him.
Yeah.
But it was funny because, seriously, there was a good month-long stretch where I'm like, how's it looking with Burrow?
Oh, yeah.
And little did I realize that a few years later I'd get a chance to call his games.
Yeah, and it's been pretty incredible to watch him make other players better too. I mean, that's just something I don't think Andy quite did as well. I think he relied on AJ a lot of the time during the season, and maybe there was definitely days where Andy outplayed, but there was certain times where he leaned on AJ a little bit. But I watching like that catch that T. Higgins had on the sideline, that ball could have been put in a more perfect spot, and for T. Higgins to make that adjustment as a rookie too. I mean, it just I actually think that T. Higgins is going to surpass Tyler Boyd down the road. We're just going to have 2 just absolute studs on the outside, and that's what I'm really looking. That's what I look at Burrow. I'm like, he just makes everybody better. Makes the defense better too, and he's not even on the field.
Again, I'll tell you what was interesting about that throw to Higgins. It was a flick. It was a Mahomes. Flick. I mean, it wasn't cock the arm and fire.
As I'm watching, I'm like, he's throwing it to somebody. He doesn't just, if he's going to throw it out of bounds, he's going to throw it out of bounds. So when he threw that, I'm like, who's getting this? And then I'm like, oh my, and it's just, oh my, this offense, just having someone like him and having that receiver group. And when you interview these guys like Tyler Boyd, the T. Higgins, AJ Green. So recently, Marquise Brown for the Ravens was upset about his lack of receptions or playing time, and I'm thinking we have 4 or 5 guys that could be number 1, number 2s on another team, and all of these guys are buying into Zach Taylor's philosophy of it's about us and it's a team thing. Is that surprising you that everybody is buying in when football right now is like usually about, it's a me, how much can I get today? And Joe Burrow, like you said, it could be on tape for 68 this week. It'd be AJ Green for 98. The next week it'd be Tyler Boyd for 100. Where do you attribute that all togetherness? Do you attribute it to Zach Taylor, or is it just something that is, with Joe Burrow as a leader?
Zach's a big part of it, but I really think things like that stem from your best players. When your best players have that trait, then it permeates in the locker room. So when you have somebody like AJ Green, who's never been a guy that's complained about how many times he's targeted. Now, he did have his rare bad moment, I guess, professionally in the Baltimore game between dogging it on the interception and kind of pouting on the sideline. But that's once in 10 years in his case. But when your star players are like that, so your quarterback is a guy like that. AJ Green is a guy like that. Jesse Bates is a guy like that. When your best players are like that, I think the rest of the locker room follows. And I think that's really a good thing about the way that they're building this team.
In 2016, we had a guy that we called Captain Bengal and Andrew Whitworth. And we lost him to free agency for a 3-year, $39 million deal with the Rams. And he wanted to stay. AJ Green has always been vocal about wanting to stay in Cincinnati. In a year from now, will you be saying AJ Green is a Bengal, or will you be saying AJ Green is elsewhere? And is it more from a feeling of like how much you love AJ Green and follow him for calling the games, or like do you sincerely believe that he could leave, or where do you see AJ Green next year?
I think if AJ plays like he did in the Indianapolis and Cleveland games, where he had 15 catches for nearly 200 yards and looked at least close to the AJ Green of old, then he will re-sign with Cincinnati. If he doesn't do much in the second half of the season and wants to be paid like one of the top wide receivers in the NFL, then I don't see him staying with Cincinnati. I'm not sure what team would pay him that way, but I think it's going to come down to his play in the final 8 games of the year. You know, the organization loves him, as we all do, for the way he's conducted himself while he's been a Bengal and the way he's played when healthy. But you've got a young core. You've got some good wide receivers. You've got to get production if you're going to pay him big bucks. So hopefully he'll play like he did in those 2 games, because that was fun to watch again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're big AJ Green guys, and we've talked about it. It seemed like every week we want everybody's opinion on it, because we want to try to understand what's going to go on in the off season. You know, we mentioned, you know, briefly as we kind of wind down, we mentioned briefly like that play with T. Higgins and the play that AJ Green's made plenty of them, you know, over the course of the years. Those, as a broadcaster, as a color commentator, as a play-by-play guy, and we have to know, like, just with, and especially since you came in 2011, I had asked first, did you know what you were getting into when you're going to be partnered up with Lap? And when we have those plays where they're great catches or just a phenomenal effort by one of the
yeah, Gio, go baby.
What do you do to like just absorb it and just keep it, you know, moving forward? Because you do that better than anybody in the business, and I don't. It's just remarkable to me. So if you could just spend a minute, I just got to know.
Yeah, Lap is the best. I love Lap. You
Yes.
know, there's an old saying in sports broadcasting that it's a long season in a small booth.
Yeah.
So if you don't get along well with the guy that you work with, it can sap a lot of the fun out of the job. But I love the guy. He's become one of my best friends. We spend a lot of time together during the season, between doing the games, doing the shows we do during the week. Under normal circumstances, we have cubicles next to each other at Paul Brown Stadium, and we would be there for several hours every day, talking, discussing what we're going to do for the next show, the next game, whatever. So one of the joys of the job is working with that guy. And there are, you know, broadcasting buddies of mine around the country that when I started doing the games, they would reach out and they say, "Oh man, does it drive you crazy? Did he in the middle of the play?" No, it doesn't. For one thing, it's not about me. It's about the listener's experience. And my listening audience of Bengals fans loves that for the most part. So it's, you know, it's a treat to spend my Sundays with you.
What was your favorite call with Lap since 2011? Because when they show it on NFL Films, that's what I love about getting Bengals content, because they put you guys. They actually and I don't always get to hear that because I'm watching the games live, not on the radio. Yeah. So when they input your guys' sound bites into it, I'm like, gosh, man, like that's the NFL Film should pay you guys for what you do for that kind of play call. So what's been your most memorable Dave Lapham call with watching the Bengals? What's been your most memorable call?
You know, my most memorable call isn't necessarily like him going crazy about something. It's the sayings. It's the Lapisms. Yeah. So a few years ago, the guys at Cincy Shirts were going to put out a shirt with a great like caricature of Lap, and the thing was groin, happy groin, which is a classic Lapism. Unfortunately, he thought that, I don't know if my grandkids are going to want to see people wearing my face or want to see a shirt with my face on it that says a loose groin is a happy groin. So there are a lot of great Lapisms like that. That's what I like the most.
How did you guys get coffin nails? Bam, bam, bam. Where'd you guys come up with that?
So that was just one of the first times that they won. I said coffin nails just as a, you know, an expression for the game is over. And he immediately chimed in with bam, bam, bam. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's pretty good. Oh, yeah. Let's make that this one belongs to the Reds. So we've been doing that. We've been doing that after wins ever since. And I'll tell you what, last year when they started 0-11, I'm like, man, I'm dying to coffin nails, bam, bam, bam. So anytime that we get to that point in a game where it's obvious that they've got that one in the bag, I enjoy doing that, and I love hearing that from Lat.
In the Adriel Jeremiah Green, did he ever like give you feedback on that, or does he not know that you do that? I think that's a great call too. Because I didn't know it, but whatever he did, it's a great flow. What about how did that come about?
Yeah, so he is aware that I do that. You know, he's seen those NFL Films clips. So that was kind of an interesting story. So when the Bengals hired me in 2011, I was still broadcasting minor league baseball at that point for the Pawtucket Red Sox in Rhode Island. So I get the Bengals job, and I say to my bosses in Pawtucket, listen, I don't want to leave you high and dry. I'll finish out the season as much as I possibly can, but you know, I'll have to leave for a day to do a preseason game here or there, whatever, until the baseball season is over. So that year, I never was at training camp. I was doing minor league baseball games until game day in the preseason, and then I would show up and I'd do the game and I'd go back to Pawtucket. So the first preseason game was against the Lions in Detroit. And I flew to Cincinnati.
That where Andy Dalton got his helmet ripped off?
Yeah. First time he dropped back to pass by Ndamukong Suh. Yeah. It was an interception to Suh. But in any case, I actually flew to Cincinnati and then traveled with the team to Detroit. So I haven't met any of these guys yet. So the guys are getting on the bus. I see AJ Green. I decide, this would be a good time to introduce myself and, you know, make a little small talk, begin to develop a relationship with the guy. So I introduce myself and we're making small talk. And at that point, I'd never looked up what AJ stood for. So I said, hey, by the way, what does AJ stand for? And he said, Adriel Jeremiah. And I'm like, whoa, what a cool sounding name. I've got to use that. So it stemmed from getting on the bus with him before my first game in Detroit.
And have you had a chance to tell him about that?
I've never described why, I started doing that, but we have discussed the fact that I do it, yes. And he doesn't seem to mind. Actually, after I did it a few times, I went up to him just to make sure that he didn't mind. And he was like, that's fine with me, so. I haven't done it in a while, though. I try to save it for touchdowns, so it's been a couple of years since
I know. I'm waiting for that, and when he does, because he will. I just want to hear that on the Podbean, which is also a great segment that you guys do. How do you come up with is it just whatever great thing that happened that week? Because it seems like there's always one ready, like it's the greatest thing. And then I'm like, yeah, that actually is a really great thing. So how did those come about?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I think so. I say that after running down the, please subscribe kind of thing on the various platforms where people get their podcasts, and then just thought of a way to tag it would be, it's the greatest thing since, and then filled in the pause. And I just kind of liked the way it sounded that first time, so it became a running thing. But now I do find myself going, oh God.
Like, I gotta figure it out. I was sitting on the couch last week. I'm like, I wonder if he ever is like, I have to have one this week. Like, so that's very funny that you mentioned it, because I even thought that for you.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
At some point, it's like, now I got to come up with something that is the greatest.
I mean, I've got to come up with 2 a week basically during the seasons, because I do 2 podcasts a week. So it's one of those things where if I see something on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever, I'll grab the nearest writing utensil I can find and scribble it down. Remember that for the greatest thing ever. So if you've got any suggestions, fire them my way, because I'm always looking for good ideas.
Brown band?
There you go. It's possible.
No, I only have 2 more questions, but John, if you have, I didn't know what other questions.
Yeah, we're starting to wind down. I just got really just one final question. We asked it to every one of our guests, and it's probably the most important question of the podcast. Skyline or Gold Star?
I can't answer that question.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I can't answer that question.
Right. Never mind. I'm sorry, man. Yeah.
Because the 2 entities that I work for have different sponsors.
All right. You're the one person that gets out.
Okay, how about this one? Okay, then one of my questions
will
be fine. I was gonna say, like, Aglameses or Graders.
Oh, Graders.
No.
I like them both, but Graders, it's not close. Come on.
Really?
Please.
My dad's gonna be disappointed. I love Graders.
Well,
Graders is everywhere. Like Aglameses, there's only 2 that I know of. So my last question is that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like the banana chip at Aglameses. They do a nice banana chip. but top to bottom, Grater's is my favorite ice cream in the world.
It's like kind of like a longer question, so I guess I can combine the two. So, like years ago, like your guys' content on the website has been fantastic. Like I don't know what changed in the last couple of years, so that's like a 1A question is what really changed in content for the last couple of years? Because it's been fantastic, all the stuff that you guys are putting out. It's made the app even more useful than it has in the past. And then also my final question is, you are also very, very vocal and truthful in standing behind the Brown family and the Bengals organization, and you work for them.
Yeah.
So what is one thing that you would love a Bengals fan base to know, who's always so critical of that man? And I think he does a great job. Like I get emotional thinking about it. He does a lot of great things for the players and the people that work for him. What is one thing that you'd want the fan base to know about Mike Brown and the rest of the family that runs that organization?
Mike Brown's been very good to me, so I will always be very loyal to Mike. But I think the biggest misconception about Mike Brown, and I hear it all the time, and I've heard it for 20 years, is that he's just a businessman. All he cares about is, making some money. He doesn't care if the team. That is the complete opposite of Mike Brown. He doesn't have another business like the other NFL owners. All he cares about are the Bengals and winning. And he'll acknowledge he's made mistakes over the years. It hasn't gone as well as he would hoped. They've been to 2 Super Bowls. They haven't won one. The 90s were rough. But I'm here to tell any Bengals fan that's listening, the man cares deeply about trying to win a Super Bowl and have that parade on Fountain Square. So I hope it happens. Joe Burrow gives us a chance.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got to be over the moon right now with optimism with what the future looks like. So with that being said, Sam, Dan, this was a dream for us. I mean, I still can't believe that we had the opportunity.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for responding, being so understanding. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
John, Sam, thanks for having me on. Sorry I called you Joe earlier.
That's okay.
My mistake. I
We're all
butcher
names. About Joe Burrow, Dan. Like, we get it. Like,
I think I had Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon on the brain. I butcher names from time to time. But in any case, this was fun. And I appreciate you guys' passion. Keep it up. Passionate fans are why I have a job.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
We look forward to maybe we'll get a chance to talk later down the road, and we look forward to the bye week, and then obviously you calling against the Steelers. So best of luck till Lapay, and we appreciate it again, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
You got it. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Take care. Hooday.
Hooday.
Hooday. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty good. That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Oh, a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, and honestly, we kept it under an hour, did we not?
Yeah, it's only 45 minutes.
I was sweating over here. I have a candle lit, and I'm like, dude, it makes the room hotter. I didn't realize that. And Rock's like all over the place, humping his bed. He's hot. But this is all gonna make it. Sorry. But yeah, man, like it happened after the Jeremy Rao podcast. I was like, I don't remember what the F I asked him. I don't even remember what the F we talked about. And this was one of those instances, and it's like, what?
You have to re-listen to it. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I have to listen to it.
And I'm like, cool. I wonder how that went, but I just think we got so much without like I said, there's a couple of things we want to elaborate on, but I think that I don't know. I said fun, man. This has been a lot of fun. This has been a lot of fun.
So it will be, we'll be looking out for Jerry next week and then Ben the following week. But yeah, we're cruising right along. I think, this one was it seems like it gets a little bit easier every week. I think this one was the most informative. Dan's obviously very, very accomplished.
Yeah.
Along with the other guests that we've had. That's just pretty, it's just remarkable. We've had every one of them on. But yeah, this one was kind of special because we've been listening to him for 10